Welcome back to another episode of Offbeat Adventures. We're standing here on the grade of the former Grand Trunk Pacific Railway and later Canadian National Railway's Graham Subdivision. We are just to the northwest of the community of Murillo, which is located in the municipality of Oliver Papoonge. We are on the north side of what is known as Wrigley Drive. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be picking up right from this spot here, and we're going to be working our way about 3 miles to the north, or 3 miles to the west on the railway line, passing Crest Station, and then hooking up with a hike that we did back in the springtime. And so there's some neat things to take a look at. Obviously the station at Crest, and then you're going to see the railway line here as it eventually comes alongside the Kaministiquia River, as well as the tracks of the Canadian Pacific Kansas City line. Just gonna put my head strap on here. Hopefully this is recording okay. So it is a very cool, kind of cloudy morning. It is the 5th of November. It's one of the latest hikes we've ever done. I've been waiting for the right conditions to do this hike, because you basically need a cloudy day, because this little section is open here. Somebody has built a little access road on top of the railway right away. You can see kind of this little ridge to the side of us here, okay, and then you can basically see the other part of the right of way here. And but it's going to get grown in, very badly grown in, because this section of grade was actually part of the line that was abandoned in 1925. It is rather cool. It's 7 degrees outside. My hands are a little on the chilly side. It rained yesterday, so the ground is a little bit wet, and then it's supposed to rain again later this afternoon, almost kind of mirroring the hike we did on the section further to the west, or to the north, we did back in the springtime, because it literally rained the day before, and then we did the hike and it rained the day after. So anyway, so maybe what we should do is we should start with our usual history lesson here. And so this line was constructed by the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway between 1905 and 1908. It was going to be an attempt by the Grand Trunk Company, which was the parent of the Grand Trunk Pacific, to construct a second transcontinental railway across Canada. The Grand Trunk Company was one of the oldest railway companies in Canada, dating back to the 1850s. So the Grand Trunk Company wasn't particularly keen on constructing this transcontinental line kind of all by itself, because it was going to be very long, and it was going to be very difficult, and obviously they're basing that on the experience of the Canadian Pacific Railway, and so they were trying to get some assistance from the Canadian government. And so there was a lot of back and forth between the company and the Canadian government, trying to basically come up with some sort of deal, some sort of partnership between the two companies. you know, it sort of dragged on for sort of an extended period of time before they were able to come up. So years and years and years before they were finally able to come up with an agreement. So again, construction started in 1905. So there was a section that started here in what at the time was the city of Fort William. So Thunder Bay was originally two cities, Fort William and Port Arthur. And then there was a section that was started over by Winnipeg. And so basically the deal is that the Grand Trunk would construct the western portion of this transcontinental line, basically everything from Winnipeg to the west coast at Prince Rupert under the name Grand Trunk Pacific. And then the Canadian government would build the eastern portion of the line, everything from Winnipeg east to New Brunswick, under the name National Transcontinental. Now, this line was a bit of an anomaly because it was a Grand Trunk line, so Grand Trunk Pacific line, but it connected to the NTR side, so connected to the eastern side of the network because it was going to go up and reach the NTR at a place called Superior Junction, which today is just east of the community of Sioux Lookout. And the name Superior Junction, the name of that meshing point was very, very indicative of the purpose of this line, which was basically designed, Luna, to give the system access to Lake Superior, right? So this was not part of the main line. This was part of the branch line. So here we go. We're deviating from this road that somebody has constructed. And so you can see the right of way is going to continue through here. So just as a note, I've been through this section before. We came through here in July. Towards the end of July, and there was a reason for that, because normally we like to do these hikes starting in the west and going to the east and then coming back to the west. Now we can't do that with this hike, because basically there's no access in between where we came in and where this section ends, which is way further to the north at Highway 102. So we have to do it backwards. So I came in here in July with a friend of mine with the purpose of sort of scouting this area, doing a reconnaissance, or as I learned when I was in the military, doing a recce of the area. So basically I could see where everything was and basically have a sense of sort of the lay of the land. So anyway, the whole purpose of this line was to give the line, the system, access to Lake Superior, and obviously for the shipment of things like grain and other products. And so again, construction started in 1905 and was completed in 1908. Now, eventually, a few years later, the entire system was completed. I just want to make a note too. Sorry, I keep distracting myself. So we came through here. This was extremely wet. It was all grown in. Obviously, it was summertime, so it's a little bit different here now that the you know, the leaves are down, and it's been a very, very dry fall. And so basically, we got very little rain in September. We got like about 6 millimeters. October, we got a little bit more. It was about 35 to 40. Again, I mentioned it rained a little bit. It's rained a little bit over the last couple of weeks here, but it's still fairly dry because it was really swampy and bad through here. So as I was saying, basically, once the line was completed, a problem popped up because there was a dispute about how everything was going to work. So the plan was that Grand Trunk was going to build the western portion of the line and then operate the eastern portion, which the government had built, the NTR. Well, when the time came, they basically backed out of the agreement because they did not want to operate the NTR because they had a whole bunch of financial issues, right? So they backed out of the agreement. And so now the Canadian government's got a problem because they have the eastern half of this transcontinental railway network that nobody wants to operate. So what ended up happening was the government ended up creating their own railway company to operate it, and that was known as the Canadian Government Railways. And so that came into effect in 1915. Now again, remember that this is a Grand Trunk line. So what happened was that the Canadian Government Railways leased this line from Grand Trunk, and it became part of their network. And so in July of 1915, the name of this line changed. It had previously been the Lake Superior branch, or the Lake Superior division of Grand Trunk Pacific, and it became the Fort William and Wraith subdivisions of Canadian Government Railways. And it operated as part of that network until 1918, late 1918. Just sort of scanning the brush here, see if I see anything, because we're in this area here that hasn't seen much in a long period of time. So in late 1918, the Canadian government decided to merge, amalgamate, whatever word you want to use, the Canadian Government Railways with a bankrupt line that we're very familiar with, the Canadian National Railway System. And so that merger produced Canadian Northern Railway system, and that produced Canadian National Railways. And so Canadian National Railways came into effect in January of 1919. And so the name of this line changed. It's going to pause here for 1 second. So in January of 1919, the name of this line changed. It became the Fort William and Wraith subdivisions of Canadian National Railways. But then later that year, in October, the name changed once again. It became the Lake Superior subdivision of Canadian National Railways. And around that time, within that time frame, CN started looking at their railway network in the area, particularly heading to the west. And so basically what they had was they had some big duplications. Basically they had, and I just want to show you here for a second, I keep interrupting myself. You can see there's actually a little bit of rock work here. So you can see that they've kind of blasted out, and you can see we're kind of going through this sort of big, long cutting area, and you can see it's all kind of swampy in here. When I was here in the summer, it was so hard to get through here. There was lots of, you can see there's branches and there was leaves, and it was all wet and mucky in here. It was just kind of a nightmare to try to navigate this. So basically heading west out of what now is Thunder Bay, Canadian National had two lines pretty much running the same route. They had the former Canadian Northern line, which had become the Kashabawi subdivision, and they had this line. And in 1922, the name of this line changed yet again. It became the Graham subdivision. And so CN decided to consolidate. Looking back here, you can see the cut here. CN decided to consolidate the lines. So the plan is that they were going to double the Kashabawi subdivision west out of Thunder Bay to a point that eventually became known as Conmee Junction. There they would build a bridge across the Matawan River to link up with this line. And then what they were going to do is eventually they were going to abandon everything east of that point on the former Grand Trunk line. And so in 1924, the name of this line changed once again in preparation for that. It was split into two lines. The Crest Subdivision, which this line was part of, named after Crest Station, which we're heading towards, and then the Graham Subdivision. And so, and then in 1925, the line was split again. It became the Crest, the Wraith, and the Corn subdivision. And in the spring of 1925, this line was abandoned. I believe the last train ran through here in the fall of 1924. So basically 90 years ago was when the last train kind of rolled through this area. And then this section of the line was abandoned. And then, so the line continued as the Crest and the Corn too many names, the Wraith and the Corn subdivisions until 1931, when it reverted back to being called the Graham subdivision, and the line continued to operate until 1994, when it was abandoned by CN. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pause here for a second, and then we're going to continue our journey to the west through this heavily grown in area.